Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is going to be a really great interview. I'm going to be interviewing JB Collectibles, I guess. I always forget the name of his channel. I'll just go by JP. Um, but his channel is one of the, like, I watch maybe about 5 channels religiously, and his is one of them, where basically he does these kind of market reports. And generally, we see these kind of hot lists where it's like, oh, you got to get these books, you got to get these books. Well, he will do like a review of those hot lists 6 months later and really show how well those books performed. And that's why I really enjoy watching his channel. I mean, and he does other things. That's not his only thing. He does D&D games as well, and he does a lot of cool things on his channel. And I always, whenever you see these people on YouTube, you're always kind of curious, what kind of cookbooks do they actually have in their collection? And so we're going to find that out today. We're going to interview JP. So bring him back in here.
Hey.
Hey, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. I am happy to be here. It is JP's Budget Collecting. I do a
Budget
terrible.
collecting. Yeah, I knew it was something budget. I was like, I didn't want to
Yeah,
mess it up too much.
I do a terrible job of like branding, like because I never go. I always just use JP as like my handle when I go on somebody's channel, so I don't use the whole channel name. And then my Instagram is JP Collects, which is not. So I don't know.
That was the confusion actually, because I was thinking, is it JP Collects or saying something totally wrong?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I should be. It should all be the same, but it's not.
No, but it's a great channel. I enjoy that. When you're doing these, you'd usually do your streams live, where where it's like, and you get the audience sort of trying to influence your vote on a lot of
the the one where I'm making predictions. Yes, I do that.
Yeah, where you're making predictions. I always think that's funny. I've seen them actually sway you a few times, so it's kind of
cool. Have swayed me a few times,
and usually not for the better.
Well, I try not to take myself too seriously. Like I do the pretty much the only video I consistently do that's like an edited pre-video is the look back, where I look back the 6 months and do the value.
Yeah.
So, and I try to keep that fairly straightforward and serious, but everything else, I'm just having fun. This is my hobby. I don't like.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's just for the heck of it.
Money from comics. No, it's checking.
No. Well, I make a little bit to help offset my silly comic spending. So yes.
Yeah. So how did you get into collecting comics and stuff?
Well, so as a kid, I was big into like I remember Super Friends I was toward the end of, but in like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and the cartoons.
Oh yeah. I watched all those shows.
Yeah, and then Batman '89 was a big deal for me as I was 11 when Batman '89 came out. I saw it like 9 times or something.
Oh wow!
I don't know. It was a lot for like I made my parents a lot.
Yeah.
And so, but how I got into comics themselves was, and this was a completely different time. I'm a Gen X kid. When I was a kid, and I'd go to the when my mom would go to the grocery store and I'd have to go with her. Like at the front by the checkout, there was always the magazine with the spinner racks. And she would literally just leave me there and go get groceries. And I would read comics the whole time she was getting groceries. And then when she got there, she'd holler at me and we'd leave. You couldn't imagine doing that with a 10, 11, 12-year-old.
Yeah, nowadays you'd be like, you get arrested for doing something like that.
But it was no big deal, and no one ever bothered me. Like, like it was just not. It was a completely different time. And
yeah. I'm a Gen Xer too, so I understand that. Yeah.
And it was just so I would just stay up there, and I never bought comics as a kid. Like I literally would just go through the rack reading them, and like my big thing was always when I was a kid, and still sort of is Batman, Spider-Man, and then a little bit of like if they had like X-Men or Superman or whatever else was there, but it was always the Batman and Spider-Man were the main ones that I, that I had to read. And so that was kind of how I did comics all through like my childhood into high school. I would still read them and stuff. And, but I never really bought comics until I actually got to college, which is so weird because most people are like getting out of comics when they get to college.
Yeah, that's what happened with me too. I really started collecting in my university years. When I
Yeah.
got to university, I was away from the parents, so I could buy what I liked.
Yeah.
And so maybe same backstory.
Well, I had a buddy that my whole exposure to comics were the spinner rack in the grocery store, the spinner rack in the bookstore. That was it. Like, I didn't know there were comic book stores.
Yeah. That was totally new. Yeah.
I didn't know there was even such a thing. And I lived, like, the town I went to college in was not very far from the town where I grew up. Like, we would go there a lot. But I was there, and one of my friends when I was in college, one of the guys I met early on in my freshman year, took me to the comic book store. He was like, I'm going to go to the comic book store. You want to go? And I was like, sure, I'll go. And one of the first books I picked up, and so I know we're going to go through some books later and stuff, but we'll start with this because you asked why I collect comics.
Yeah.
Was, get the glare off, and this is my original copy.
Okay. It's graded quite well considering.
Yeah, it is actually, because it's been read a bunch. But this is it's dated, October of 96. I was a freshman in college in the fall of 96. And I'd always been a Batman fan and everything else. But this story and just the whole Nightwing story, he became my favorite character due to this run. Because he was this is the beginning of him going off on his own to Bloodhaven. Like, this is him.
Okay.
Like, he had separated and been part of the Titans and stuff. But this was him being a superhero on his own. He wasn't part of a team. He wasn't in Batman's shadow. He was doing his own thing.
Yeah.
It spoke to me because I was in college. I was away from home. It was the first, and he was already a character that I enjoyed. And so, this is the book that, and then I was just, from there, I'd always been hooked. I collected all through college. I collected through grad school. And then I moved 2003. I moved to the town where I live now. I got the job that I have now still. And there's no comic book stores anywhere near me. There's just not.
Okay.
I'm like, the closest one's like an hour. Hour.
Wow.
No, maybe 50 minutes. But so I was out of comics for 15 years. I would dabble back every so often. Like, if I'd go in someplace sometimes, or I did a little bit around the time New 52 started. I was doing a little bit of digital stuff early in the digital days, early Cosmicology and stuff. I was doing I was reading some stuff then. I got into a lot of manga and stuff because you could read that all online.
Yeah.
You could find it for free and you could just read it and stuff. And I know they've kind of cracked down on that a little bit now.
Now they're a little bit hurt.
It used to be the Wild West.
Free sites, so it's
okay. It used to just be the Wild West. You could just read any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And now, so that went on till 2017. My sister lives in Chicago, and she moved, and I was up there helping her move, and we wandered, and there was a comic book store literally a block from where she lives. And I wandered into one for the first time in 12 years or something. And I picked up a couple of trades and I was hooked back. And then I found out there was a store a little closer than there had been before. And then I found Comic YouTube, and it just all it snowballed on me. So I really didn't start collecting till 2018 probably. So
yeah, I think that's kind of similar to a lot of people where they collected in the 90s. They sort of fell out of it for a little while. And then something around 2018, maybe a little bit earlier for some people, but around that time period, people got back into it for whatever reason. Yeah. Maybe the budgets got a bit better. I don't know.
I don't know.
Finally, we had the money to spend. But yeah, I had sort of a similar thing where I'd buy periodically between those points, but not to the extent that I do now. Yeah. And I think something about 2018, maybe it's the MCU. Do you think?
I think it was, so about 2015, I discovered Funko Pops.
Oh, okay.
So I started buying, and I was collecting Funko Pops. And the thing was, I was collecting Star Wars, Marvel, and DC. Those are the ones I was collecting. And it was and so we wandered in. So that started maybe 2015, and I'd always kind of kept a peripheral view of what was kind of going on in comics, but I wasn't reading much. And I was always a reader, even though I bought and kept stuff, I was always a reader more than a collector, like when I was before. And I don't know, we went into the store and I picked up a few trades, and then I found the comic shop that was a little closer that's since closed. It was like 40 minutes. So it was just a little bit closer, but it's closed since then. But and I just slowly started going into it. I went to my first con like the spring of 18, and this slowly like hooked me back in. And then I found Comic YouTube, and it was just kind of like, okay, yeah. And I just started making the effort. And I got a pull list at that shop, and then I started making friends and was reading stuff. And then since then I've been playing catch up. I was out of it.
All those books that you missed out on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I get you to show your collection, I'm curious, when did you start your YouTube channel?
January of 2019.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So yeah, we'll be going
to start, actually. I think,
Yeah. So it was interesting. Like I found the first channel I found that I really watched a lot of, like, because I was just curious about, because I started out, I was watching a little bit like Funko Pop YouTube. And then I found a channel that was talking comic books, and they kind of disappeared. A couple of the first ones I watched kind of disappeared. And then I found Comic Tom, I found Reggie Collects.
Yeah.
And
those are the first kind of two that
those were like a lot of people's first ones back in, like a lot of people were watching those when it kind of started. But I mean, like I remember Reggie, when Reggie was like constantly like reversed on his camera, sitting in his kitchen, and he had like 200 followers kind of thing. Like that's how early I found like Reggie. And I don't hardly watch Reggie anymore because a lot of his stuff is like new collectors and that kind of stuff. And it's
it's a different.
Yeah, I just kind of drifted away from it. But but it was, and for the longest time, I never said anything in the chats. Like I just was like, I didn't have a profile. I never typed in the chat. I just watched. And then I finally like started chatting a little bit, and had people like respond to me. And I'd almost made like some Funko videos back in like mid 19 or mid 18. And then I was like, January of 19, like I'd been a part of, like I'd been hanging out with some people, and I just decided to make a video, and just for the heck of it. And then I got some good response, and a few of the people I'd been interacting with in the chat like responded, and people like Discovery Bay and Comic Books NYC and John's Comics for Kids. And then I reached out to a couple of them, and they invited me on their channel, and I went they came on my channel, and it just kind of started from there. And one of the first things I did, I want to say like less than 2 weeks into having a channel, was the first of the look back videos. And it was really just trying to figure out something that nobody else was doing that I thought would be interesting content. I had no intention of being the reputation I have now is I'm the anti-spec guy, and I'm the I have this whole group of people, and they're great, and for the most part I love everybody that watches my channel, but it kind of took on a life of its own that I never really expected, that I was going to be cranking out basically weekly for almost 4 years a look back video.
No, it's cool. I mean, the funny thing is you have you don't never have to worry about finding content. You have like built-in content. You just go back.
I do. But sometimes I wish I didn't. There's weeks. Do I really have to do another one of these?
Cool, because actually, I never saw you as an anti-spec guy. I just saw you as realistic guy. You break it down.
That's what I try to be. There's a few people that put their own they project their own feelings onto what I'm trying to say, which is
they probably were the ones that bought those books when they were hot.
Well, and see, that's part of where it came from. When I started collecting that first year in 18, when I was buying stuff, and I was watching Tom, so I was watching the Hot List, and I remember those from the 90s and Wizard Hot Books, and I used to read Wizard and all that kind of stuff. So I love those kind of lists. But I realized I was chasing stuff that I didn't really care about. And I started trying to think. I was like, well, And there was one guy who would do that I watched early on that really doesn't make anything. At least I don't think he even has a channel anymore. Was Capital JB Comics.
Okay.
And he would do this thing like at the end of the month, he would go back and he'd be like, so let's see how the hot covers that we were all chasing this month are doing now. Like, so some of them would be like a week after, some of them would be like 3 weeks after or whatever. He's like, are they still?
Yeah, it wasn't enough time to really see.
Probably. It wasn't enough time to really see, but he was doing it. I thought it was an interesting approach. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, where are the hot books? Like the first week of August, he'd do what were the hot books of July and what are they doing now? And it's like, well, that's not enough time to really see anything. And
yeah,
I sort of just fell into the 6 month thing. I know a lot of people are like, why didn't you do a year? And I was like, well,
no, actually, I think 6 months is a good time. It's, it's sort of like when movies come out, the books are at sort of their peak. And then if you look 6 months later, they've fallen from that peak.
Yeah. And the other thing I noticed was, particularly in the spec market, is you get a lot of ebbs and flows. So, so if you wait a year, there's liable to be something else that's happened to alter the book that had nothing to do with the original thing.
Yeah.
Or you've come around and now the movie's out or whatever, Yeah. And so it's like, so I thought 6 months was, and looking at like the numbers over a 3 month period, you don't see the books move a ton, but over 6 months, you can see like, if there's been no news in 6 months, you can see a big change.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And whereas the year, sometimes you can see that in a year, but sometimes something else has happened. Like there's a couple books that recur and there'll be news and they'll jump on the list. And then about a year later, you get new news and they'll jump on the list. And it's like, okay. Yeah. And it's like 6 months feels about right. I know some other people have encouraged me to do the year thing. And I'm like, I'm just going to stick with it.
I think you're actually good with sticking with 6 months, because what I've found is generally it takes like a couple of years for something to come out. So you get that little feedback that, oh, this movie is going to be made. And then the books go through the roof, right? And then nothing happens after 6 months because nothing's happening yet.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, they like maybe a few months after that, maybe like 8 months later, they say, oh, well, we now know that they're making this movie and this actor is going to be this character.
Yeah.
And then the books spike again.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? Like there's sort of those weird kind of, it's almost how Hollywood will kind of tease things too, that they kind of schedule it that way.
Yeah.
And so 6 months is sort of in between where they're scheduling, I guess. That it's sort of people.
It does seem like that. I mean, every so often you'll stumble on something and you'll get like a book that was hot 6 months ago. Well, literally there'll be an announcement the week I'm doing the Look Back show.
Oh yeah, and then
and it just happens sometimes. And then a lot of times I'll try to talk about, well, what did it do in between? Like right now, if you look at the price 6 months ago and you look at the price now, well, this is up or steady. Well, yeah, but you had a big lull in between where you could have went and got it or whatever. So you just kind of like, and that's the main thing is, we talked before we went live, like you'll have books that like, that Clone Wars 1, that Ahsoka book that I passed on when it was like a $50 book. And you'll have books that go up and never come back. But they're usually books that have been pretty undervalued and there's been a major change in the character.
Yeah.
But even within those books, like if you don't like that, you don't want to be patient, you want to try to jump on early. But if you wait too long, like once they're up, like then you're just looking for lulls. You're looking for you're
looking for it'll dip a little bit. But it's
you look to get the bargain at the new value. Is really what you're talking about. Because it's too late to get it beforehand. Like once the news comes out, it's too late to be before. So then you're looking for the lulls, and that's really what I try to remind people of. And with that video, that was the original purpose of the video, and it was for myself as much as anybody, because I would do that. It would be like, oh, I should go get this, and it's like, no, wait, be patient. And sometimes I've been doing that video for almost 4 years. By the time this comes out, like it'll be within a month, probably of 4 years. And I still have to remind myself occasionally to be like, no, do not click buy.
I mean, FOMO is a real thing. It really does. It's like the excitement and all that kind of stuff. You just want to get it before You missed that opportunity.
Yeah, you want to have it, and it's just like
yeah. But I use your list. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I use your list as a way, like I look for those books that have collapsed, like just completely died, that are actually still, in my mind, kind of cool books. And those are the ones that I generally pick up. The ones that just crashed and burned, like dumpster fire level books that I think are cool.
The great example I have is, and I didn't, it's not one of the, because I tried to not bring, like, I had like a stack of 30 books, and then I was like, I'm not going to leave them all up here. And this is when I put back. The show is my copy of Batman Adventures 12, which is the first appearance of Harley.
Yeah,
and it's a book I always wanted. Like, I'm a big Batman fan. I big female character. I try to get a lot of female first appearances because they tend to be a little less valued than some male characters, or at least they used to be. That has changed in the last few years quite a bit. But it used to be they were way undervalued compared to. But it was so funny. Like, in the run up to the Birds of Prey movie, that book was going through the roof, and I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to swing this or whatever, or get a copy that I want. I'm gonna have to get like an 8.0 or something. And that movie came out, and everybody panned it.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And the book crashed. Like, it crashed hard. And I got a 9.4 of that book. That, like, a 9.4 was pushing $1,000 right before the movie came out.
Yeah.
And I bought a 9.4 of that book for under $400.
Wow.
Like, within 3 months. And then within 6 months later, it was back to where it had been before the movie hype, which is about a $600-$700 book. And then now it's still kind of in that range. But, like, it was just one of those things that it's like, if you know the market, after it comes out, is wait a few months, and that's when to buy.
Like, well, in a way, if you know that it's going to be a really bad movie, that is, then you should buy it. Buy it after, just right after the movie comes out, because you know it's going to crash and overcorrect often.
Yeah, and if it's a really bad movie, they overcorrect. And but even if the movie is fine and it comes out, and people know the character is done for a while, they forget.
Yeah.
Like, they just like you have a character like we've seen, like, Monica Rambeau. We know we're getting her again. We know she's coming in the Marvels. We saw her. WandaVision, that book was through the roof.
Yeah.
Now that book is as cheap, if not cheaper, than it was before we ever knew she was going to be in WandaVision. But eventually she's going to come out again, and then it's going to go back up. And it wasn't because people didn't like the actress or the portrayal. It's just they're not thinking about it right now.
Yep.
It's not it's not at the top of the list.
And it's good. Yeah, I picked up all those books after WandaVision was done.
Yeah.
It was like they were cheap. I also picked up West Coast Avengers, the one with the white Vision.
Yeah, this is going back through the roof right now.
Yeah, no, well, I picked it up like once it was like, it went up to like $1,000. It was more expensive than the original version. You know, a high grade of the original version. I was like,
it was going for more than the Avengers 51.
I think I picked up a 9.6 for like $60.
Yeah.
That shows you how much it had come back down.
No, that book crashed and burned.
Yeah. But now it's probably going back up again. But the funny thing is just, that's why I'm saying I enjoy your list, because I look for those crashes, because I still think that's a cool book. I like the homage. I think it's a cool character, pick it up.
When you're collecting the character, you're collecting the book, and you're not collecting the spec, then just patience. Wait till if there's a character and you get a movie announcement, just be patient. Like, eventually there's enough of them. They're not going to, like, disappear from the market.
Yeah.
It's not I mean, we talked about, like, this book. Now, there's not a ton of these. When you get an opportunity on some golden age
you
stuff,
got to pick it up when you get it.
Different, but modern stuff, just be patient.
So I got to get you to show your books. So show me some of your favorites in your collection.
So the ones I pulled out, I already showed you the Nightwing book. So Nightwing is like my favorite character.
Big, so you can.
He's my favorite character. Yeah, and then my other character that I love is Barbara, is Babs, and of course when I was collecting in the 90s, she was Oracle. But these are the two Bat characters that are my favorites. So this is the first, like, big book I ever bought, like, when I got back in. like that I saved up and bought was to get her first appearance. That I spent more than, I think the most I'd spent on a book before I bought this was like $125 or something.
Wow.
So this was the
Can't
first,
get much
like,
for that nowadays.
yeah. Well, I've spent more since, but this was like the first one that I had to have. So this is a big book that I in my collection, and this just kind of
a book I really like, actually, just because I like the fact that they present her. You know what I mean? Like she's being presented on the cover. And I think that's really cool.
It's a great first appearance cover. There's some first appearance covers that you're just like, oh, but that's a good one. This is one of my few Golden Age books. I don't have a ton of them. One of the things I targeted is, like I said, female characters, female first appearances were more affordable. And I really wanted Golden Age Catwoman, a Golden Age Catwoman book. Obviously, I will never own the first appearance of Catwoman. I will not own a Batman one because that's just not. Yeah. So, and this isn't her first cover; it's her second, but it is her first one on Batman, and I love this cover. And like we were talking about this earlier, and there was an opportunity, and this was just one of those that I just snagged when I had an opportunity, and it's a super beat copy. I don't care. It actually presents better than the grade.
It doesn't look bad. It looks like a higher grade. Is it just one of those spine ones where it's the spine that's messed up? Or?
Well, the centerfold and the next wrap are both detached inside the book.
So, but in a slab, you can't tell that.
You can't tell that. And the staples are in really bad condition. But, I mean, the book's just kind of...
The cover presents well. It's not like there's a big chunk out or something that...
No, there's not a chunk. I mean, even if you look at the back, I mean, there is obviously a spine roll going on here. But, like, you look at the back, there's no big chunks missing. There's really, the creases aren't that bad. They're not, I mean, there are creases, don't get me wrong, but they're not that bad. It just is, the staples are in bad shape, and there's 2 wraps are detached, and it's just a low grade because of that. So,
nice.
Like, I will not complain.
No, it's a cool book. Just to have it in your collection is like a big deal.
Yeah. So, and then the only other Batman book I brought down, so Batman is and the Bat family are big. Like, so I have the first Harley, I have like the first Talia, I have, which is what my most recent edition. I have like both of the other 2 Batgirls, like Cassandra and Stephanie, and I have I'm slowly getting like some Bat keys and that kind of stuff. And then this was actually an AOK that I received on my channel from my friend, Comic Books NYC Kavi, sent me this book because he knew I was looking for it. And
that's a really major AOK, by the way.
It was then, and it's become way more so.
And that's a huge book.
Yeah, because this was, he sent me this book in the fall of 19. So back then, it was a really big deal. Like, it was, one of the more expensive books in my collection at that point. Now it might, depending on where it's at one point, it was the most valuable book in my collection. I don't think it is. It's not anymore, but it was, it has jumped considerably since you sent it to me.
I mean, that book, I don't know why. It was undervalued for the longest time.
Yeah.
Longest time. And then recently, it seems like people are beginning to respect DC. Like, I remember in the 90s, like in the 90s, that's how far back this is. People would always say, look, someday DC will get the love and respect it deserves.
Yeah.
And still it hasn't happened. But I think it's maybe happening a little bit more now. Like
it's happening a little bit, but it's, it's still behind. And I think part of it is a little bit of it's a little bit self-inflicted. I mean, you look at like what DC puts out, like
the movies
it's like terrible. It's just like Batman, everything, and then like there's like 4 books that are not Batman. Okay. And so there's a lot of focus there, but I do think like this is a character that she's gotten a little more love in the comics in recent years. A lot of the stuff with like a lot of the stuff with Harley, and then that cartoon show, and just a lot of that has just brought attention to her. And I think it's just finally like it's a book that's finally getting some love. Another book I didn't pull out is like I have the first Silver Age Catwoman, that Lois Lane.
That's a good book.
you know, I just didn't want to have like 30 books standing here. So I just pulled out a few. I made myself put a few back. But I mean, this is a good example of really where I collect. These 4 books are a good example of how I've collected Batman in terms of, you know.
Do you like that Silver Age kind of Batman stuff? Is that...
For the most part, I focus a lot on just like specific character keys. I have like, I don't have a ton of books. I have a few Silver Age stuff. Like I have first Silver Age Penguin, first Silver Age Scarecrow.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have like the Catwoman book, the Barbara Gordon book, the Poison Ivy book. But beyond that, I don't have a ton of Silver Age Batman. Talia, I guess technically would be like Bronze Age. That's a very recent addition. But yeah, so it's kind of just looking at characters and trying to grab some keys related to them. So I have a lot of like the Nightwing stuff. Like I have a bunch of the Teen Titans books. I'm still looking for Brave and the Bold 54, but I have like 60, which is the first one they used Teen Titans, and Donna's first appearance. Yeah. And then I have, you know, DC Comics Presents 26. I have 1 and 2, the first appearance of Deathstroke. I have the first, you know, New Teen Titans number 1.
Do you have the first Nightwing?
I have the first Nightwing. I actually put it back because I was like, "Oh, this is my example."
Since you picked Nightwing as your first book to show, I was thinking.
Yeah, I showed Nightwing as my first book, but because I was showing that book, I decided not to leave the tail.
No, it's okay. You would have been a Nightwing episode or something.
Yeah. Cool. So, but yeah, I have a lot of that stuff. You want me to just keep showing stuff?
Yeah. Show some stuff. What's your favorite book? Like of all-time favorite book in your collection?
It's this book. Just because of the personal meaning.
Okay.
Like it's not valuable. It's just the personal meaning of, because it's the book that really turned me into somebody who wanted to collect, who wanted to like make sure I wasn't missing. Like it just changed the way. Like I'd read comics before that, but I never collected and was not like, if I missed an issue, I didn't care. I was just kind of like, I was reading the issue that it was in hand, and it just changed the way I thought about them a lot. In terms of like, if I had to say like, now from a like cool, I can't believe I have this book in my collection, not even necessarily value. This is probably maybe like the fact that I have this book is like,
not many people can say that they have that book.
Yeah, that's a big one for me that I have. Like in terms of pure story reading, like only recently have I gotten like into, like I read a few indies back, but you're talking about like Cliffhanger and Image and some of the indies I read in the 90s, which like some of those weren't the best storytelling. It was a lot about the art.
They weren't. There was more about the art.
Story, like in the indies I've been reading, is like my favorite independent comic I've read, and probably my favorite comic book story. Like of all the stuff I've read is East of West.
And is that a crime-based story?
It is post-apocalyptic Western kind of thing.
Okay, that's an interesting.
So basically, it is, if the Civil War, it's basically an alternate reality where the Civil War resulted in America being divided into basically 7 nations.
Okay.
And then there's obviously like, there's some supernatural aspects to it and some other stuff, but like there's basically the Union, the Confederacy both still exist. There's a Indian nation, and Texas itself became its own thing. And then there was like a lot of the slaves like around Louisiana and stuff, they formed their own nation as well. And then there was like basically the Chinese population on the West Coast basically formed their own nation out west. And so there's just this different dynamic to the country, but it's really a story about a family in a lot of ways. So it just is, I just really love it. The artist Nick Dragetta, who did it. Both the artist and the writer, Jonathan Hickman, wrote it. We're supposed to be at CTET this year, but Hickman had to cancel. He got COVID right beforehand. But Dragetta gave me that's Death that he drew, which is the guy on the front cover. And yeah, I just love this story. I love this book.
Nice.
And so that was why I pulled it out. It's my favorite read probably. And I've been reading a lot of indie stuff and like a lot of things I really like, but that's still, at this point, it's still my favorite.
So. Yeah, I mean, that's a book actually that's on my want list. I haven't picked it up yet. So it's one that I was planning on picking up. But yeah, it was one I heard about. I didn't know much about it.
It's got some very cool characters in it. I like the characters and just, yeah, it's it's really well done, and I really enjoy it. So. Other stuff like, so in terms of like collecting, one of the things I didn't collect much of until recently, even though I've been a fan since I was a kid, I was always a huge Star Wars fan as a kid, everything. So I've started collecting the Star Wars books. I still got a long way to go on this because I waited way too late to get, we talked about earlier how I got into some of these before they took off. I did not do that for Star Wars. That was a mistake. When Star Wars books were cheap, I was not collecting them. But yeah, so I had to eventually track down Star Wars #1, and I got several I still need to get. But I've started slowly filling in my Star Wars.
After The Mandalorian, those books just became crazy priced.
Yeah, this was not one I timed well.
You can't always time it well.
No, you cannot. And so, but so those are a lot of what I collect.
Oh, okay. You're gonna show one more?
As long as we're still doing this. The other thing, like I said, I'm a big Spidey collector. I didn't put a ton of the Spider-Man books up here. Like I do have my first Black Cat. This is one I timed very well. But yeah, I have my first Black Cat. I have like the first Gwen. I have the first Mary Jane. Because they were Spider-Man characters whose first appearances you could actually get for a reasonable price.
Yeah, Black Cat was always undervalued. It was always a cheap book until recently.
Yeah, and then like I have like first Silver Sable, and I recently got like the first Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, and there's some others, but like compared to like, Doc Ock or Green Goblin or even like Hobgoblin or something, like those female first appearances, even the Gwen, which was her and Harry, were so undervalued compared to a lot of the other ones. That I've been getting a lot of those. I don't have a ton of Spidey keys, but I've been slowly working on the female character side of it just because they were a little more reasonable to go after. So this was just kind of my example of like some of my Spider-Man female collection. I also have like, this is up here because this is like the first slab I ever bought when I got back in.
Oh, really? That's an interesting one.
Well,
was it at a good price at the time, or?
Oh yeah, this was like this was the $125 book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That I bought before. This was the most expensive book I bought before that Detective Comics.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I grabbed this was the trades that I'd heard about, stories I'd heard about that were good. There were 3 ones, like I picked up a few DC things that I read before, like, we just started Rebirth on DC side, so it was like Nightwing and Batgirl and stuff. But I picked up Spider-Gwen, All New Wolverine, and Thor. And those 3 were really some of the stories that looped me back in. So I got the Spider-Gwen, and then eventually I tracked down, because Thor at the time was Jane Foster, and then obviously All New Wolverine was Laura. So recently I tracked this down.
Oh, nice.
And this was ungraded when I got it, and like the 9.8 tempts me to actually trade it back for like a 9.6 because I'm not normally a 9.8 guy, but I also like having the 9.8. So I don't know that I want to try to get a different one. I think. I know, even though it would fund some other significant books if I did. So I don't know. And then eventually I also tracked down first appearance of Jane, second Thor, which is like, it's a 1.0. It's super low grade, but like so much easier to get, so much cheaper than like getting the first Thor or the first Loki. But to get her first, like to get second Thor in her first appearance was like immensely more easier than trying to get like his first appearance or Loki's first appearance.
Yeah.
And plus, I really enjoy that Jane as Thor story. So that was one that I'm super happy to have. And then last one, the other like books that I kind of read when I was a kid, and I threw this one in because I don't have a ton of them. I read a lot of X-Men. That's probably the other thing I read the most of, although I didn't really buy them very much. And this is a recent, my friend John sent me this one. Basically, like, had other people that I knew, like, wave me off from buying it, like, 3 different times. Like, I thought somebody else was sending it to me. Like, they kept like, don't buy that, don't buy that. I was like, okay. And so, first Emma and Kitty, which are 2 of probably my 5 favorite X-Men. So, and yeah.
I'm a big Emma Frost fan, so
I'm a big Emma fan. I'm a big Kitty fan. Like, Kitty and Laura and Emma are all like some of my favorite characters, X-Men wise. Storm and like Colossus I love a ton. But yeah, so this is a, you know, I don't have a giant size, but this is, to me, next to Giant Size and like X-Men 1, this is one of the better X-Men books to have, period. So
I just wish they were on the cover.
I know. That's the one thing that is disappointing, is neither one of them is on the cover of this. And so, but still super happy to have it. So those are the books I kind of pulled out to kind of show off, is like in my collection. So
no, they were good books. They were good books. So yeah, what book would you be chasing now? Like what one are you kind of
so I have a list. Like a few years ago, I did a little over 2 years ago now, I did kind of what I called the 50, which was like, if I could have 50 books in my collection, these are the ones I want. And I'm going to like, a few of them I already had when I made the list, but most of them I didn't. And then like slowly I've been like whittling that down and revising it as I went along as my taste has changed.
The list is a little bit more Action 1-like.
Yeah, well, a little bit more, not Action 1-like, but so currently it's the 25.
Okay.
Like that I'm working on, which I eliminate all the ones obviously that I already had, and just 25 that I was looking for. And so for this year I had picked out 8, and and you can see like these were the 8 that I picked out for this year.
Okay, so Brave and the Bold 60.
Yeah, so I grabbed that when I was at C2E2. This one I actually my friend Daymare's like snagged that for me, and then we found out after the fact that it actually has like a cutout in it. So I'm gonna have to replace that at some point. But for now, I have a placeholder. Okay. I got my ASM 122 to go with my ASM 121, kind of completing my Gwen set. And then Marvel Spotlight 32, which was my first Jessica Drew. I talked about that, and then my X-Men 129. So all of those green ones I've picked up this year. The 3 that I have not, that I'm looking for, is Brave and the Bold 54. So my first Teen Titans, yeah. And then Sensation, there's not a individual issue.
Right. It just says Sensation Comics.
So my goal is to get like an early Sensation Wonder Woman. Like I want like an early, and I have like 5 or 6 different ones that I'd be like, I would be okay with. Like if I found them, kind of thing. So that's why there's not a number. It was like, get one of them this year, kind of thing.
Sensation Comics has really great covers.
I really love the banner. I like the big square Sensation Comics banner. Like, so a Golden Age Sensation is really on my radar that I want to get. And there's a list of about, I think there's 4 that I've kind of prioritized, but there's about 10 that I would be like, okay. Like, if I snagged one of those that aren't like the stupid expensive ones, but they're just like cool covers. Like I'm not looking for like first Cheetah or first, like some of the. I'm not necessarily looking for the keys. I'm just looking for like a cool cover that I can actually afford it.
Yeah. I mean, I was picking up some of the mid or later issues for around $50 to $100.
Yeah, if you can find a good copy, I just haven't pulled the trigger. There's some ones that you can find for sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're undervalued if they're non-key.
Yeah. And then the Star Spangled Comics, which I haven't really seen one come up recently, if you don't know, is the first solo Robin, basically. Basically, Star Spangled Comics, he's on the cover of this one, and they did Robin side stories where he was on his own, like in the Golden Age. So he's on from like 65 through like 84, something like 82, somewhere in the early 80s. Is like he's on the cover of all those Star Spangled Comics.
Okay, so it's almost like Golden Age version of Nightwing.
A little bit. I mean, he's Robin like the whole time, but it's Robin for the most part. It's Robin solo stories, so it's him doing his own thing without Batman, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's the first one, and so that's one. It's not a super expensive book, but it doesn't.
I don't think many people even know about it.
Yeah, and it doesn't come up very often. So if I ever it's one of those. If I ever find it for the right deal, it'll probably be like on the top of my I want list until I find a copy that I can like. I missed a copy last year because I had just bought something else, and it was like then it popped up, and it was like, and I don't have anybody.
Yeah. You can't spend what you don't have.
That's right. I know. Like I just kind of had, I don't remember what was the book I bought. I don't remember now which one it was that I just bought. I was like, so, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So,
I mean, those Golden Age ones, you just gotta be patient. They come up every few years, and then you just
gotta grab it when you can. And yeah. So it's kind of where it is. And then, obviously, I'm working on a few runs I'm trying to complete, and then I've got my friend. I talked about Kavi, Comic Books NYC, has gotten me. I dabble a little bit on the art side of stuff, and like I get I've gotten some sketch covers, and I now own a couple of pages, but that's I'm very much just dabbling on that side of things. I think it's expensive fast.
Yeah, one of those art pages pays for your whole entire collection kind of level.
Well, the right ones will. Yeah, I don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
But so we should wrap up soon. So what are you working on now, and where can people find you? And
so JP's Budget Collecting on YouTube.
I'll put the link in the description.
JP Collects on Instagram if you want to reach out. And I still do the look back video, comes out on Saturdays. I pretty much do that every week no matter what. Try to get that out. And then most weeks I'll do Cash or Trash, which is we talk about the books that are hot that week, and we kind of make predictions. And that's the one where I interact with the chat that you were talking about earlier.
It's fun. Yeah.
And then other stuff I do is when I hang out with John's Comics with Kids, we do Comic Gories every so often. That's on his channel. It's like a comic game show where it's a cover competition that it's a lot of fun that I help host with John. On my channel, I do what I call the Indie Show, where we just do, it's kind of a book club. We're reading indie comics right now. We're reading Sandman and Black Hammer, and we just kicked off Deadly Class this last week. And,
I picked up Deadly Class, strangely enough.
So we just did Volume 1 Thursday. So, well, not when you produce this, but when we were recording this, it was Thursday.
Thursday a month ago.
A month ago. And then, we just do those kind of things. And then occasionally do a few other things. Nothing really on a schedule beyond that. D&D on Sunday nights. And so. Yeah,
that's cool. I was actually wanting to say thank you. When you put the list at the end of your video where it says the breakdown of how things went up, down, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
that was me that recommended that. And then
was it? I couldn't remember who did that.
Yeah, it was me that recommended. You actually thanked me when you did the list.
Okay, did I remember who it was that it sent when I thanked?
Yeah, you actually remembered at the time.
Okay, because it's been a while now. I was like, who was that?
Yeah, that was me. Strangely enough. But yeah, that was I appreciate that you took the feedback and actually incorporated it into your video. So.
I need to up my graphics game a little bit. But,
no, it's actually fine. Like that's one thing. Like I'm not sure you probably haven't watched that many of my videos. My videos are like the least edited videos out there. I literally just record and hope for the best and then put it out there.
Like I am generally, so the only pre-recorded thing I do is the look back. And it is almost, I am one take wonder if I can pull it off. Like, like 90% of the week, it's one take. I just go through it. If I stumble a little bit, I just keep going. I don't have to like edit all that stuff. Unless there's something really bad, it's one take wonder. if I can pull it off. Occasionally the dog starts barking or something and I have to pause and like,
yeah, I think my Halloween special, like my dog is going crazy in the background. I have like all these things, I don't care. Let's go with it.
So the editing is I add in like the books and the little slides. That's the editing I do for that one.
And you're doing it on your computer screen, right? And you just have it like slide out. That's awesome. See, that's the way it should be. Yeah. But one thing I actually have found is the comic community is pretty forgiving of that kind of thing. And they're pretty nice actually most of the time. So so thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And if you ever need me on your show, I don't know what I can do, but I'm happy to come out. And if you ever want to come again on my show, you're welcome to.
I'll look forward to that. And we'll get you on one of my indie show. Read something and we'll discuss a book or something at some point. That's not the only thing I have people on for. So, either that or we'll put you on the Comic Gories with John and I and let you.
I should show you my Sensation collection. You'd probably.
Yeah. Oh, I'll be jealous.
I'm working on the run.
Oh, the whole run. Wow, nice.
Yeah, I've won through like almost 1 through 10, and then I have a bunch in the.
Very cool. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I have not. For the most part, I've resisted Golden Age just because I know the rabbit hole that is.
It is a rabbit hole.
But it's also one of those things that I'm also getting to the point, though, I have a lot of the books that are more modern that I really want. So I'm also sort of in the stage where I've been thinking about reevaluating what it is I'm going to go after. So I may start going more after Golden, but I don't know. It's a little more, the budget on that is.
You gotta be a little careful. Like I was pretty lucky about some of the wins, like auction wins that I had. Like I got, I think 6 through 9. And it was that's like the first Kangaroo, first Magic Lasso. There's a bunch of big keys within that little run. I think it was like 3,000.
Oh, wow.
And just for those books. But each book is like a 2,000 to 3,000. It's like a pretty good score, Yeah,
that's a good score for sure.
Yeah. So and they were higher grade than what they said that they were.
Oh,
they were grading them at like G level, and they were like VG. It's pretty great.
Take the win.
Yeah, exactly. So you never know. You can find some pretty amazing deals. Yeah. Okay, again, thanks. And I'll wrap it up. And if you, not you personally, but if you, the audience watching this, wants to check out his channel, it'll be linked in the description. And if you want to join me, and you have a really great channel and you want to come on and be interviewed, reach out to me in the comments below as well. So thanks again, JP, and we'll chat later. Okay, bye for now.
Later.
Okay, 1 sec.